Welcome to 8 Cubes. I'm KMBest. He's Lambie Series. You're watching this on his channel. We alternate. You will be able to catch further episodes of this on both of our channels. This is our show where we talk about the 8 most important topics in Marvel Snap. And while this episode will be releasing just a little bit late due to some scheduling conflicts, we do have an OTA jam-packed reaction. However, since we're recording it late, it's also a pretty informed one. I've played like 10 hours of the new patch already. We can actually talk about what things are happening in reality. So let's start with Arishem, who was raised to 15 cards. That is the nerf that got applied to Arishem. It did meaningfully change things to me, but maybe not enough to knock him off his pedestal. What do you think, Lambie?
Yeah, I think Arishem's biggest upside right now. I mean, it's always been the upside, right? It's still the energy cheat that it's going for him. Like, obviously, okay, we can 100% say that this is a nerf, right? Because you just made the deck a little bit more inconsistent, right? Like, it's for sure the case. It's just that I feel like personally, I think that the energy cheat does still outweigh the increased inconsistency of the deck. Of course, now you cannot rely so much on drawing specific cards on curve, right? Because you just see them less often. So personally, it's fine for me because I'm just very used to and in love with the fact that I can play with a random cards and play them earlier out on curve. And I feel like that might be a direction you have to lean a little bit more into right now, because it's just naturally less likely that you will see the cards that you put into your deck, or another option is also you put more cards that mean something into your deck.
Yes.
You put more high impact cards, and of course when it comes to high impact cards, they usually cost a bit more, right? And also in a sense, they are also generally I mean, you put a bit more of them in your deck, but you don't actually play more of them per se, because they still cost a bit more expensive. So you play them on turn 5 or turn 6. So your early game is, I guess, a little bit compromised if it's just all random cards. What do you think, KM?
That's what I've done. Since the patch, I have about a 72% win rate with Arishem over about 40 games in High Infinite. I'm currently in top 10 at the time of recording here. And what I've done with Arishem is basically build for that impact. Everything has to matter a lot more. 2 cards I want to highlight that got better in the deck. Quinjet and Mockingbird. More of your cards are no longer your cards. It's important to be able to work that out. Quinjet especially much more important now because of how compromised your early game can be without your ability to cheat stuff out. Also, added importance, Agent Coulson, very excellent. And I'm running 4 5-drops in Arishem. Or 4 6-drops and Arishem. In the deck, 6 of the cards that I put in there cost 5 or more. And again, this is the sort of deference to impact that we have to make. We need, when we draw our cards, them to really matter. So I'm running Dr. Doom, I'm running Blob, I'm running Mockingbird. I am playing cards that have to win me games. And of course, I think of those cards, the most important of them is Alioth. Alioth is the best of the 6-drops right now, and I do think that is one of the big reasons that this deck gets to exist, is that it is an Alioth deck and has Alioth bailing it out of all its awkward scenarios, and your opponent never really knows if you have it or not, which is a very awkward thing to deal with. Now, the other thing to talk about is Loki is so far and away the best card in the Arishem deck right now, because it plays both offense and defense. It's your best offensive card and your best anti-Cassandra Nova card. Absolute bomb of a card. We'll talk about that one at the bottom. I personally believe that Arishem is still probably the best deck, but it is also still beatable in many of the same ways. It's just that I used to feel very confident with Cassandra Nova Athena decks, and now it's they nerfed those too. I still feel pretty good about them, but when they're Lokiing away their stuff, my Cassandra Nova isn't as good as it used to be, and that Loki's really good into what I'm doing, and yeah, I don't know. I think that combination of things might mean that matchup isn't as good as I used to think it was now.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing, which is I like the mention of the whole Alioth thing, because I feel like Alioth is definitely good in decks that always give you priority, right? Because you can obviously get its effect off. So Arishem in general should have priority for the most part, because it's just a deck that plays bigger stuff than usual on curve, right? So on average on turn 6 or even turn 5, sometimes your cards are just your stats on board are just more than your opponent already. So Alioth always kind of gets to hit its mark, and at 610, yes, Shang-Chiable, but 610 is actually a very decent stat line for what it can do. It literally wipes the entire turn, and then it's a 610. So I
don't know why they buffed it. It'd be fine at 6-8, and then they were like,
Agreed,
let's give it 2 points of power. Why? I don't get it. I don't like it. Next up, Thanos. In consecutive OTAs, I believe we've had a Lockjaw reversion and a Mind Stone reversion. However, early returns on Thanos have not been particularly exciting to me. Do you have anything? You're the Thanos guy. Like before you were all these other guys, like the bounce guy, the whatever. You were the Thanos guy. That was your
What's the Thanos
thing.
guy?
Are you attached enough to this card to like feel good about it? Because I've seen several other Thanos guys be like, I don't think so. I don't think this does it.
Yeah, so I've been the Thanos guy for the longest time ever, but I've also been the like non-supporter of Thanos ever since it became a Quicksilver. Because like at the end of the day, and it became ever since it became a Quicksilver, and ever since that they changed too many of the stones to just support only Thanos. But I guess that's kind of in line with like the fact that Thanos is meant to be supported by the stones. But it's obviously a worse card, you know. So now Thanos gets the Mind Stone to 1 back, obviously a buff for sure. But the problem is Thanos is like caught in the crossfire of like cards that do stuff to Arishem as well, right? Like Cassandra Nova.
Yeah.
Also farms the Thanos deck. Loki, Omega farms the Thanos deck. To a certain extent, Darkhawk still does a bit of work against the Thanos deck as well. So like, I feel like Thanos is just like, it's just like it got some stuff back, and SD knew that it could get some stuff back because it just won't be like the powerhouse that it used to be, you know, because like it's just caught in the crossfire of everything that works versus Arishem. So I feel like as much as yes, your Thanos decks will be a little bit more consistent, a bit more playable right now because of the 1-cost Mind Stone, it's not gonna make the deck like suddenly good enough to be like competing with Arishem or better than Arishem. It's like the energy cheat from Arishem is just too significant. It's like the main big bad right now, Arishem. And like Thanos is just honestly, Thanos in its current form is just like way past its prime in my opinion. Like I don't think like if we have the stones and Thanos' effect the way it is right now, it's gonna like make the deck any better anytime. So like the old versions of Thanos were with the old effects and old text was like just too much significantly better.
One of the things that we've learned from Wiccan's release is just how bad Quicksilver is.
Yep.
And it turns out that Quicksilver is infinitely worse when you're not even playing him on turn 1. Like just and it's even worse in the context of a deck that really needs to roll downhill in order to start doing things. It needs like one of the like, okay, you want to be a lockjaw deck? Too bad. One of your big 6-drops guaranteed starts in your hand. That sucks.
Yeah.
You want to be a lockjaw deck? Too bad. Some of your stones, they're not going to be in your hand. They're going to be in your deck now. Like it's just this baseline equation of Thanos really wants to be playing stones early, big guys late. And having Thanos in your hand is the exact opposite of that stuff. It's just, it might honestly just end up being unworkable as long as he has that text. It is entirely possible. Like, here's what I want to know. What if, because like, I know if they gave Thanos the Agatha text, he'd be busted, right? Is there any way to make this not suck? Is there any way to make this not suck and like have Thanos be good while still maintaining this text? I really do want to know about that.
I'm thinking if like Thanos can have maintained the Quicksilver tax, but I guess some of the stones revert to their previous utility, you know. Like I think we need the time stone. We need the OG time stone, not this Thanos discount time stone, honestly. OG time stone at least gives you okay, maybe that's a bit too strong.
Yeah,
but
it's
I think that kind of gives you a chance to compete though. But then that just makes it another ramp deck and not really a Thanos based deck, right?
Like we just turned it into Arishem 2. And it's like, okay. Great job, we did it. We solved it. Like, I want this Thanos is your, I don't know if you're familiar with the Magic the Gathering stuff, like, he's your commander. I want that to be good, and I worry that it's actually impossible because it's so bad to start with a 6/10 in your hand.
Agreed.
Next up is Nocturne, down to 3/4. Everyone knows how I felt about this card, just straight up the best 3/5 in the game. Now, not even a 3/5, and definitely not the best 3-drop in the game. Where are you at on Nocturne now?
I mean, 3/5 gold standard, right, for 3-cost cards. Like, I feel like we've mentioned this a few times also, but like Nocturne is just fine, and like it's like Nocturne and copycat stuff like that. It's just fine to play in your deck, just cause like it's like baseline stats are good, right? Now that I think SD also knows this, and they want to reduce the Nocturne play rate a little bit. That's why they made it a 3/4. I don't think it's strictly unplayable, but like it feels not nice to play this guy in my deck anymore. Like honestly, like when I see the 3/4 Stella, I'm just like, oh, what it could have been. It could have been a 3/5 that like maybe changes the location. I think the mobility of a 3/5 was what made it really really good. Like it's just mini vision, it's cheaper vision that like reallocates points. I think we talked about like the power of reallocating points a lot in like other videos, and I think that's like super important. Now you're reallocating one less point, and I think that's like a very, very significant change, right? Like I know the location changing thing is important with Nocturne, but reallocating 5 points as and when you want was actually something that was a bit more important to me. So I feel like now you're only reallocating 4 points, and like that's the whole like biggest reason why I would want to run this card. 1 point less of reallocation is actually a big deal to me, and I think you will definitely feel it if you still keep playing Nocturne in your deck.
It pushes Copycat above her by a
Of course.
large margin. But one other thing that has really hurt Nocturne is Loki becoming a generically playable 3. Like, you're playing it in Arishem, I'm playing it in Bounce. I was playing it in Mr. Negative. Like, Loki's just in decks now. And so there's just not as many slots for Nocturne as you would want. Yeah. And Copycat's taking one, and Loki is taking one, and then there's Pixie Mobius decks where Mobius takes one, and it's just like, usually there's something relevant to your game plan that goes in there, like whether that be that Mobius, or like if you're Rock Slide on a Darkhawk deck, or Cassandra Nova, and it feels like so many of the 3-drop slots are spoken for, and Nocturne was occupying this generically good spot, but now it's becoming a more focused, targeted thing, unless of course you're just running Copycat, which is the new Nocturne, I guess.
Yeah. I just want to talk a bit about like the good 3-cost cards in the game right now. There's so many, right? And like, okay, I do know why Red Guardian disappeared into Oblivion, but Red Guardian was also a card that used to be really, really
it's
good,
still
right?
Good. Like, you could play it.
Yeah, it's still good, but it's just like so competitive, right? That slot, like,
yes.
Like there's like so many good things to play, and like in the current state of the meta, I think the Copycat is just like a little bit better.
Let's talk about maybe the second best 3-drop in the game behind Loki.
Yeah.
Cassandra Nova got a 0 power change, so now she is a 3/0. And that is, I think, like when you combine that with the Arishem change, she's better into Arishem. A, they're Lokiing less. B, they have more cards in the deck. But she's worse everywhere else. I consider that a pretty good change. She was kind of a free roll everywhere. I think this is just like smart game balance stuff from Second Dinner. But I will say that I did like just not having to think about putting Cassandra in my deck. It was nice. It was cool. Now I have to think about it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, like with Arishem definitely being one of the top decks in the game right now, like any deck that can fit a Cassandra Nova will want to fit a Cassandra Nova, right? Because I wouldn't say it's auto win, but it's like it's like the closest thing to like a like a easy win condition versus the Arishem deck, like it's easier to fit into most decks than Darkhawk. It's just cheaper, and like honestly, the 3/0, I personally think it's not that significant with this card, because like it's still like gonna be, even versus normal decks, it's like 3/6, 3/7, which is like above average stat line, right? So I do think this card will still see play in the meta. I mean, like it will see play, and you will not feel bad playing it against like random decks, but you will definitely see play because Arishem is a thing. And like it's like Arishem is a thing, and you don't feel bad playing this against other decks as well. That's why this card will always be in like many decks right now. And it really just fits everywhere, right? Just because of its mana cost and its convenience.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the way I felt against Arishem pre-change was, as long as I have a Cassandra Nova and a Shang-Chi in my 12-card deck, I feel like this matchup is good. And the only thing that changes that now is Loki, right? Like, it's literally just Loki making Cassandra Nova not, 15 power on the final side of the game. Like, that's actually the entire thing that matters, right? And I think that is frustrating to me that like Loki plays such good defense against Cassandra Nova. I do also, because like not only does it replace the deck, it also draws a card from it. So like there's no way for her to ever be bigger than like 11 power, basically. It's just like she goes from being, and like Arishem can make up 11 power. It's a lot harder for them to make up 22. And so that is like a really big deal that Loki is so good into her. But like she's still, yes, obviously the best thing to do if you want to have a reasonable shot into Arishem. Next up is Sandman, who got maybe the least consequential nerf. Maybe Sandman, maybe Athena, we'll see. But Sandman going to a 5/6, I don't think should meaningfully impact everything about this deck. But what I've noticed, and this is weird, is that I kind of don't think it's all that good anymore. Like, it's like, I know that sounds insane, but like, I feel like the old Sandman builds no longer hold up to a new Arishem build. And it's not like Arishem is all that much different. It's just that like the Arishems have Loki, they're Loki. Every Arishem is playing Loki. Sandman needs Cassandra in order for that to happen. If you don't hit Cassandra, you're screwed. If you do hit Cassandra and they hit Loki, you might be screwed anyway.
Okay.
And then there's also all of these other decks playing Loki, which are decks that tend to be normally pretty bad matchups for Sandman, or pretty good matchups for Sandman. Like a bounce werewolf deck playing Loki. You're like, oh, that's food. I'm going to eat it. I'm a Sandman deck. Except they Loki'd you, and now they're playing your 6-drops. And you're just like, oh, I guess I just lost. Like, I think the prevalence of Loki is legitimately hurting Sandman in a meaningful way right now. And that is perhaps more impactful than the actual change to the card.
Yeah, I agree. Like from 5/7 to 5/6, I think Sandman is still a fine and very playable, like sort of floodgate card on turn 5, right? But I feel like what you mentioned is like super true. The fact that the presence of Loki is like everywhere, like and the Sandman deck does run singular big cards, right? So the moment they play the Loki, they play, and then you play the Sandman, you're just like, all right, sure, I'm just gonna play your cards. They're a bit cheaper and they're still big, right? They're like even like the example that you gave, the bounce deck thing. If they play Loki, they just get to play like your big cards as well. So like, it sort of mitigates the fact that your opponent is playing a 5/6 floodgate on turn 5,
Yep.
And like Arishem, yeah, so in general, I would say that the power level of decks have increased because of Loki as well. And because of that, Sandman decks, they kind of cannot just like play a Sandman and hope it locks out the entire final turn as well. Because there's either going to be a lot of stats on the board already, or turn 6, your opponent is definitely going to have something big to play as well, Which is why I'm still a very big fan of like, okay, as in like Sandman got nerfed, yes, but I'm still a very big fan of Sandman Ultron specifically, because Ultron does mitigate a lot of the so-called like lack of stats that you might have versus decks that like maybe Loki you, or like play a lot of early stats and then you kind of catch up without the Ultron. But then obviously on the flip side, they also can steal your Ultron. And like if you've been hit by a Sandman, and then the only thing you can do is play your opponent's Ultron, because it's the most stats, you will play the Ultron, right? So like, I feel like at the end of the day, it's just hoping they don't draw the Ultron that gets stolen, I guess.
I will say this. I think Sandman decks in the aggregate were stronger before everyone decided they were running only Ultron and Red Hulk. Because I'll tell you how I win a lot of Sandman games. By playing Alioth on the extremely obvious Ultron lane.
Okay, that's true.
They're so predictable now. Red Hulk is literally face up. It is an Arishem case, but it's just like, there's Cosmo it, Juggernaut it. There's a bunch of stuff where it's just like, I'm using this to illustrate. That's like the most meta relevant point, is like you're gonna get your shit Alioth, but like it has become an incredibly predictable deck, and that is bad for win rate. Like, it used to be different. It used to be there were Ultron and Red Hulks, there were Dooms, there were Leaders. There's no Dooms and Leaders anymore. It's just Ultron and Red Hulk. That's it, and that makes it so much easier to play around. And I think Sandman players need to start swapping up their top end a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, diversifying a bit. Like, it's also kind of bad for cube gains, right? Like, if your top end is just so predictable, it's a bit bad for like anything more than 2 cubes and a retreat, or 2 cubes and a loss,
I saw the change to Athena, and I was like, oh, they made it 2-0. It's unshankable. I know exactly what's going to happen. About 500 people are going to be like, this is a buffed Athena. It can't be shanked anymore. And that will maybe debatably be true for the literal top 100. And then I am nearly certain of this. Everywhere else on the ladder, she will have a worse win rate. Like, I wouldn't even be shocked if she had a worse win rate in top 100. People vastly overestimate how bad it is to lose a point versus how good it is to have Shang-Chi free. And I'll talk about why really, really quickly. Let's get into the general, and then I'll give a specific example. This is something I've got like stored up. Normally, I throw it over to Lambie after like 30 seconds. I want to talk about this one. Okay.
Go ahead.
So, the general, right? Okay, Athena can't be shanked. All right, you know what? That's cool. But like, how often was that happening anyway? Everyone was playing around that already, and it's like, okay, so it's like maybe a 2-point difference. Now you don't have to play around it, but also everyone was already playing around it. And this is also more important. The number of games where that would have mattered is always going to be less than the number of games where losing 1 power matters. Because the number of games where losing 1 power matters is every single game. Now, On to the specifics. One of the things Athena decks got to get away with previously was just playing a 5-drop on 5, because that was actually good for them because they weren't putting their Athena into get blown up range. Now, that's actually costing you. You are costing yourself points on Athena that you could get and not be in Shang-Chi range now. And these decks were built with that in mind. You would play like a Gwenpool on 4, a Darkhawk on 5. You'd want to have something you were happy to do there. And I do think the more you optimize for Athena, the more you lose those haymakers on the end, the worse they become. And that is a meaningful cost. But fundamentally, the number of games where being unshangable matters is way less than the number of games where having one less power matters. A lot less.
Yeah, KM's points actually make a lot of sense. Like some of it is some stuff that I wanted to say myself as well. Like when you are playing Tina decks for the most part, right? If you look at the way the Tina decks have been built thus far, there will always be that one turn where they don't actually want to play 2 cards. There will be a setup card, right? Like you mentioned, like the Gwenpool. Sometimes in the past, even the Darkhawk.
Yeah.
On turn 5, that kind of thing. There's always one turn that they only just play one thing anyway, and they expect the Tina to be like at the end of the day. In the past, it was like a 2/7 sometimes, or even 2/10 on turn 6, that kind of thing. So it's never really a shangable card if you think about it. Like it's now impossible to shang, but it was actually never really a shangable card to begin with as well, with the way the decks are being built. So it's kind of interesting. And secondly, also I feel like one thing that Ken mentioned that's super important is that like if you get to really shang Athena versus the 100 times that the Tina is one less power than it used to be in the past. Like it's just way more significant that it's lost of power, right? And also I do want to mention that like this is the very bounce theory to me. Like say okay in a classic bounce deck there is there is Bishop, there's Angela that can get Shadow King, for example. Okay, that's maybe not a very good example. My point is just basically that like if you're spending 4 mana to shang a 2 mana card, at the end of the day, they probably have developed tons of stuff everywhere else already, you know? So this whole Shang Tina thing and it's unshangable right now, it's actually probably not very significant. The most significant thing is that this 1 power loss, you will feel the impact of it over just 10 games. I'm pretty sure you'll feel the impact of it already.
Every time you play the card, it shows up. You feel it. Let's talk about Wiccan, a 4/7 with an on-reveal ability where if you have used all your energy on previous turns, Wiccan will give you 2 extra energy. Lambie, I ranted a lot last time. I'm going to throw this one over to you.
So this card is so interesting to me in that I talked about it just being a decent 4/7, and even if the effect doesn't go off, it doesn't really matter, right? Like in the past. But apparently it's actually a lot easier for this card to go off than I initially thought. Like if you just build your deck, right? Like if you have a 1 or 2, and then on turn 3 it's either a 3 or 2+1. Like it actually happens more often than you think. And that's really just because when you play a mid-range deck, you kind of just draw these cards anyway. And then on turn 4 you just play the Wiccan. And then the rest of the game is just simple, right? You just get +2 energy for the rest of it. You're just basically the Arishem deck without having to do the Arishem thing once you get the Wiccan live.
Arishem, yep.
Exactly. The payoff is so big, by the way. I think Wiccan in something like Loki, just a standard Loki deck is super, super powerful. Because you don't even need the top end, right? All you need to do is just play cards on curve and then you play the Wiccan, and all the extra stuff you draw from your opponent's deck that's now your deck because of the Loki. It's just you can literally dump your whole hand on turn 6. It's that cheap. So I feel like Wiccan's main, to me, okay, yes, Wiccan's main draw is that it's a 4/7 that if it doesn't work, it's fine. It's a 4/7. But it actually works a lot more consistently than I previously thought. What do you think, Cam?
Every deck I've played, with the exception of maybe one, since the patch, has been a Wiccan deck or an Arishem deck.
Yeah.
That is... I'm not saying, again, Wiccan is not the all-star in any of these decks.
Nah, it's not.
Whether that be the Pixie Wiccan deck or the Loki Wiccan deck, he's always second. He's just there because you can do it, right? It'll work some of the time. And Wiccan's best friend in the entire world is Kate Bishop. Because if you have a 1-drop into Kate Bishop, you're gonna be able to figure out how to get through turn 3. Other best friends, Kitty Pryde, Maria Hill, these are cards that basically set you up such that just by putting cards on the board, doing what you normally want to do, you will have access to Wiccan, and then suddenly you can start doing things that are a little more unfair. I have not felt a rush 1/2 Loki Wiccan in so long. It feels like one of the strongest things you can possibly do. There's some cool Pixie decks out there with Wiccan. There's some cool Loki decks out there with Wiccan. He is second fiddle, but he is good. And I think the thing about Loki Wiccan is okay, it's a 3-5 with upside and a 4-7 with upside. It's just good. It's just like, oh my god, my upside plays are just great stats. You just feel awesome about everything that's happening. I haven't found the exact perfect build for either of them yet, but I do think that it is out there. I know that I did a video on a Loki build. I have evolved that Loki build further. I don't think it's fully perfect yet, but like, there is probably something there with this card. It has felt genuinely powerful.
Yeah, I think highlighting the Loki thing is quite interesting because like I feel like building specifically to make Wiccan work might not be like that successful. Like people talk about things like Domino and Quicksilver. Like you don't want to do those kind of things because you're like building too deep into trying to just get the Wiccan to work, and then after the Wiccan works, you're just like, all right, how do I win from here? Like, you don't actually figure out the part about winning after the Wiccan. Whereas for like decks like Loki, they have so many inbuilt win conditions that like if the Wiccan works, it's fine. If it doesn't work, I have the Loki thing, and like you say, Wiccan is the second best thing to do, right?
Yep.
It's still a 4-7, so it's not that bad. It's just like I think you shouldn't be tunneling. We shouldn't be tunneling too hard into like trying to get this Wiccan pulled off. So we change our deck ratio such that like it's like playing specific cards like Quicksilver and stuff like that, which is a bit like they don't do anything basically after the Wiccan. Like even if you put a Wiccan off, right, and then what happens after that?
They also make you less likely to draw the Wiccan.
Exactly.
One thing that you need to do when you play Wiccan is play Wiccan. Back to a rant, I guess. We're talking about Loki, and Loki's broken. Like, I don't really know what else to say about it. This card is... Are we allowed to swear? This card is F.
Sure.
This card is F'd, dude. Like, I don't know what they would have to do to nerf this card. What I do know, actually, is that adding an energy to it hurts it a lot more because it's, like, denying an extra draw. Adding energy to this card is, like, very, very meaningful. Is taking power off meaningful? Would this card be in everything if it was a 3-3? I don't know. Like, let's say you were paying crystal prices to get Loki's effect. 3-3, 3-2? I think 3-2, it might actually just be ass, right? Like, but 3-5 is just like, no, that's just way too good. It's just way too good. The other option is maybe they nerf the draw. Maybe it doesn't draw a card when you play it. That's an option too. However you want to do it, but like my instinct is either take some power off, add some energy on, or get rid of the draw. Those are, I think, the options here.
Yeah, I think so I think the 3-3 and 3-2 options would make it like totally not played, right? So I don't want it to be that card. I think what I like so far about what you've said is 3-5 no draw. I think 3-5 with the same effect and no draw, because if you just think about it, right, when you play a Loki on turn 3 and then you draw the discounter card, there's this feels good feeling of like, that like you're gonna be drawing a lot of cheap cards, and like if you get rid of the draw, right, the deck is random, yes, but it's now random, and like you take longer to piece together a game plan from that random deck, Now obviously not having a draw is obviously way worse, but like I feel like understanding why not having this draw is way worse is because also you are getting a random deck, and without that one draw, you don't get to piece together like combos or game plan from looking at those random cards as easily, So I think taking away the draw makes the most sense. The card will still be played in like, I guess, Arishem, obviously, but like at the end of the day, it's not going to be like, all right, I'm gonna play a 3-5, I'm gonna draw a discounted card, I'm gonna keep drawing discounted cards to pair with all these other discounted cards that are already in my hand, and then like I'm gonna formulate a game plan. That feels way too strong for me. But yeah, I like 3-5 no draw. That's where my head is at as well. Or you could do 4-5 with the draw.
4-5, I guess, like kind of 4-5 is that's the same as like 3-5 no draw, right? Because it's like it's like it's a worse body, but like you're losing the same amount of the draws that you get.
Card,
my instinct is I want to try just like making it really bad stats. I want to see how strong. Yeah, like 3-2. I want to see. Are you still gonna play it? Is it still gonna be worth it? Tell me. Are you still gonna play this crap? I don't know. Maybe
only in Arishem. Only in Arishem, maybe.
Yeah, but it's like I don't know. I kind of want to know. I want to know. So my instinct is like that's what I would do with the card. Like maybe give him crystal stats, maybe even worse. I don't know what's actually gonna happen though, because like I think taking the draw off is the one that lets it stay in the same shape the easiest. And so I do think there's maybe something to that as well. Either way, someone's got to do something about this guy. Good God.
It's been around for too long, man. Like in literal all shapes and forms and variants, right? Like Loki has been around since like a year. Yeah. He's never dying, and he's the god of like deception, right? He's always gonna find a way to come back.
I actually have been reading some Loki comics. In current incarnation, they are the god of stories.
Mischief.
They're the god of
Stories.
stories
Okay.
now, which is like a pretty cool twist on the character, actually.
Yeah, like in Marvel Snap context, like if stories are metas, right? Loki is literally painting a new meta every single time he's changed, right? Like he's always gonna be around in just a different form.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for making it through that video. Sorry if I got a little bit ranty, but I think you're probably used to that by now. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I've been KMBest. He has been Lambie Series. I pointed the exact wrong direction. He's been Lambie Series. Not there's nobody on the other side of me. Please don't look on the other side of me. There's definitely nobody there. I swear, I promise. He's been Lambie Series, and he's gonna take us out.
Thank you so much for being here. Like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you guys in the next one on KM's channel. Bye bye.